The third round of negotiations in Istanbul has already started. Protests over the controversial law on anti-corruption bodies continue, and there's a new warning from the Intelligence Directorate. We'll have live reports from our correspondents coming up. Hello, friends. I'm Irina Prokofyeva, and this is TSN. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, like, click the bell, and comment on what you found most interesting. Here are some of the topics in today's issue. Istanbul. Round 3.
It is here, in the Cheragin Palace, that negotiations between the Ukrainian and Russian sides are to take place tonight.
Should we expect any breakthroughs from the meeting between the Ukrainian and Russian delegations in Turkey? And is Moscow ready to abandon the language of ultimatums? Live coverage from the negotiations. System failure. For the second day in a row, protests are spreading across Ukrainian cities. What demands are the protesters making this time? And why does the government refuse to notice the thousands of people out on the streets? Ukrainian prayer in the case of the Lavra.
Instead of those obscure words like Izisi na nebesi, it was Cassia Tizia Amyetvoi that was heard.
Why has the service already been called historic? And why were monks of the Moscow Patriarchate running away from cameras and the Ukrainian language? In Istanbul, Ukraine will insist on a complete and immediate ceasefire. President Zelensky announced this on social media. Meanwhile, negotiations between the Ukrainian and Russian sides have already begun there. Our delegation is headed by the Secretary of the National Security and Defense Council, Rustem Umerov. Representatives of Intelligence, the Ministry of Defense, the General Staff, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and the President's office have also arrived in Turkey. So, what should we expect from the third round of negotiations? Right now, let's ask our correspondent Natalia Fibrik. She is with us live. Natalka, hello. Glad to see you. So, the negotiations have started. As far as we understand, about half an hour ago, at least that was the timeline. Do we have any news for us yet?
Irina, hello. According to the latest information, the negotiations are about to start because there really were all the prerequisites for them to begin on time. The delegations arrived here on time. And they also took the camera operators for the protocol filming well in advance. That's why I'm joining in by phone right now. Sorry for these technical conditions. The cameraman is still here at the Cheragin Palace. And literally just 30 seconds ago, he texted me saying, we're going to the hall. This means that the delegations have already taken their seats there. And now, the very beginning of the negotiations can be filmed by the cameras. Literally, they're allowed to stay there for, I don't know, about 30 seconds. And then the cameramen and photographers have to leave, and the actual negotiations between the delegations begin. So, with about a half-hour delay, they're really about to start right now. Before this, we could see the delegations arriving here at the Cheragin Palace. It was pretty hard to tell who was in the motorcade because there were no flags or any identifying marks. But later it became clear that the Turkish diplomats arrived here first, then the Russian delegation, and after that the Ukrainian side. Interestingly, Rustem Umerov arrived separately from the delegation, and he came a bit later. And of course, there's some speculation about why these talks were delayed. It's possible that there was a meeting in a smaller circle, like last time when Umerov, Medinsky, and the Turkish foreign minister met. For now, this is just speculation. There's no confirmation. We'll try to find out about this later, after the negotiations. And indeed, as you mentioned, Rustem Umerov is heading our delegation. Right now, we can see how the Russian delegation arrived in Istanbul. What's interesting is that for the Ukrainian delegation, it was actually quite a long and productive day because their program started, in fact, in Ankara. And the head of the president's office, Andriy Yermak, was also present there. They met with Turkey's political leadership, with the president of Turkey, and with the Minister of Foreign Affairs. They thanked Turkey for providing this negotiation platform. And they also discussed certain bilateral issues, such as the possibility of cooperation, closer cooperation in the defense sector. So now we are waiting for the negotiations to begin here. What are the main topics for Ukraine? This was also stated by the President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky. First of all, there's the humanitarian track, the return of Ukrainian prisoners of war, and the return of Ukrainian children who were deported. However, the Ukrainian delegation will insist especially actively today on the need to hold a meeting at the highest level, that is, Zelensky, Trump, and Putin, because only in such a format can any real political progress be achieved. What are we hearing from the Russians who are very active here? There are a lot of them here, Russian press. They are getting involved very actively, and from their side, there is a desire to discuss memorandums. Let me remind you that at the previous meeting, the parties exchanged memorandums, draft documents outlining how they each see the end of this war. And these are documents and positions that completely contradict each other. Ukraine insists on an unconditional, immediate ceasefire. Meanwhile, Russia is once again putting forward its demands, which essentially amount to capitulation. After the negotiations, there will be press briefings, so we'll have more details, and of course, we'll share them, possibly even at the end of our broadcast.
Thank you, Natalka, for this preview of today's talks. The third round of negotiations between the Russian and Ukrainian delegations has already started in Istanbul. And truly, I hope we'll see each other again at the end of the broadcast with good news for Ukraine. Natalka Fibrik from Istanbul. The President of Ukraine hears what society is saying and sees what people expect from state institutions. Volodymyr Zelensky wrote about this in his social media in response to the peaceful protests of Ukrainians and shared a photo from a meeting with the heads of agencies. In the photo, in particular, are the heads of law enforcement and anti-corruption agencies, as well as the Prosecutor General. Zelensky stated that criminal proceedings in Ukraine should not drag on for years without lawful verdicts, so necessary decisions will be made to unite and strengthen the work of all responsible institutions. And another meeting, the President reports, is already scheduled for next week. And for another one, they are supposed to agree on and, most likely, present a joint action plan to the public. And following the meeting at the President's office, NABU and SAP also published a joint statement in which they criticized the new legislative changes, arguing that these limit their independence. From now on, the anti-corruption officials say they have been deprived of the guarantees that previously allowed them to effectively carry out their tasks and functions in combating corruption. To restore their full operations, they see clear steps at the legislative level as necessary, steps that would return the guarantees revoked by the deputies. At the same time, they stated that they will continue their work in the interests of the Ukrainian people and once again thanked everyone who cares for their principled stance and support. They called on international partners to fully support Ukrainians in their fight against aggression. The new powers of the Prosecutor General allow various law enforcement agencies to assist each other. Ruslan Kravchenko stated this at a briefing, commenting on the adoption of the controversial law regarding NABU and SAPO. The Prosecutor General announced the possibility of giving new momentum to criminal cases that have not been investigated for years. With the legislative changes, the Prosecutor General now has the ability to form a group of prosecutors from different agencies or a joint investigative team with NABU and other law enforcement bodies. According to Ruslan Kravchenko, this should make criminal investigations more effective. The Prosecutor General also added that he does not plan to interfere in personnel decisions at the Special Anti-Corruption Prosecutor's Office and once again assured journalists that he does not intend to take cases away from NABU, including those involving top officials.
Taking away criminal cases en masse and handing them over to other law enforcement agencies. No, that will not happen, because NABU, SAP, and other law enforcement agencies will continue to carry out their activities as they have, and will remain under the Prosecutor General. But first and foremost, as I told you yesterday, I will pay attention to those criminal cases that have been under investigation for a long time, specifically 1, 2, 3 years or more, without any procedural decision being made.
The international community is not staying silent either. The Czech Foreign Minister, Jan Lipavsky, emphasized in a phone conversation with Andriy Sybiha that support for Ukraine is not a carte blanche for any actions by the government. The diplomat wrote that Prague is closely monitoring the situation in Ukraine and reminded that the fight against corruption is an important part of the path to joining the EU. The German colleague Johann Wadefuhl also held a phone conversation with the Ukrainian Minister of Foreign Affairs. He stated that Germany expects Ukraine to consistently fight against corruption. By the way, Wadefuhl met with the heads of NABU and SAP during his recent visit to Kiev. The French side is calling for the controversial law to be reconsidered and insists that it is not too late to fix everything. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen had a conversation with Zelensky on this matter. She is concerned about the law and is asking the Ukrainian government to provide an explanation. Concerns have also been expressed in Sweden and the Netherlands. Meanwhile, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development has warned Kiev that an attack on anti-corruption agencies will negatively affect defense investments in Ukraine and funding for reconstruction. The relevant letter has come into the possession of European Pravda. EU leadership notes that, for now, they will not be suspending their assistance. Meanwhile, Radio Liberty commentator Richard Jozwiak reports that one of the possible consequences for Ukraine of obstructing the work of NABU and SAPO could be the suspension of visa-free travel. Such a measure has already been threatened against Georgia. The president will propose a response bill to Parliament that will strengthen the law enforcement system. He announced this in his evening address. Zelensky also noted that he had signed a decree to reduce bureaucratic procedures and to conduct an immediate audit of state expenditures.
I will propose to the Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine a bill that will serve as a response, that will strengthen the law enforcement system, and there will be no Russian influence or interference in the activities of law enforcement agencies. And which is very important, all provisions ensuring the independence of anti-corruption institutions will be included. And I am very much expecting concrete proposals from our group of leaders of law enforcement and anti-corruption agencies from the Prosecutor General of Ukraine.
Proposals, those provisions that need to work. This will be a presidential bill, and we will implement it as part of our state transformation strategy.
Meanwhile, people all over Ukraine are once again gathering for mass protests. Our TSN correspondent Alina Hushchik is at the rally in the capital, and she is live with us now. I hope we'll see her now. Alina, hello. Tell us what's happening there. We can already hear you.
Hello. Yes, I can hear you, Irenka, and I can also hear what's happening here. But I apologize. I might have missed something because it's so loud here. Right here, at the spot where the rally is taking place. It's so loud that it's hard to even hear myself. So, it's not even 8 o'clock yet, which is the time the rally was scheduled to start. And there are already so many people here, by my estimation, more than there were yesterday. And there are noticeably more posters now, a lot more slogans that the protesters have brought with them. And right now, you can even read a few of them yourself, or I won't comment, and you can also hear what people are shouting and demanding here.
Total repeal. Total repeal.
Well, what they're shouting most of all is for the complete repeal of the bill or for it to be put to another vote. So, these are the main demands of the protesters who have gathered in the capital, and actually, in other cities of Ukraine as well. Just now, Zelensky published his evening address, in which the president clarified that he will submit a bill. Well, let me explain a bit. Right now, it's no longer possible to prepare the law, but it is possible either to gather 45 votes from deputies and submit this to the Constitutional Court, which can annul the law, though that's a much longer procedure. Or, alternatively, to introduce a new draft law that would either annul the previous one or amend those regulatory provisions. In fact, Zelensky has already taken the first step in this direction and announced in his evening address that he will submit such a draft law to the Verkhovna Rada. Not everyone here has seen this news yet. And still, we don't know if this will satisfy all the protesters. We will keep monitoring the situation, and we're also following the developments in other cities across Ukraine. These include both large and small cities, in total up to 20 cities throughout Ukraine. Well, you see, they're shouting a step back. We will keep watching how events unfold and, hopefully, continue to update you throughout the broadcast. Irenka.
Thank you, Olenka. We'll stay in touch and return to you closer to the time announced for the event. We'll see if more people have shown up. Well, as we can see, the president's answers did not satisfy all the protesters. Alina Hushchik reporting from outside the Franco Theater in the capital. And TCH has received an exclusive comment from the Minister of Internal Affairs, Ihor Klimenko, regarding yesterday's protests. In all the cities where protesters took to the streets, there was not a single violation of public order. Everything went according to the law, both on the part of the participants and the law enforcement officers. Now, direct speech.
Everything went quite tolerantly. We understand that people have the right to express their opinion, and it's very good that we have this mutual understanding. Of course, we hope that the next rallies that will take place will also be within the law, observing the curfew and, of course, with respect for our soldiers and our citizens.
Friends, what is your opinion about the recent events related to the controversial law? Be sure to share your thoughts in the comments to this broadcast on YouTube. Of course, give us a like and subscribe to the channel. Meanwhile, I will continue with the TSN broadcast. Last night, Sumy was once again heavily attacked by Shaheds. A woman was killed, and 9 more people were injured. As a result of drones hitting critical infrastructure, part of the city is without electricity. Medical facilities were connected to generators, and water was supplied according to a schedule. Our TSN correspondent Oksana Solodovnik will tell us what the situation is like in the city.
It was a difficult night and a tough evening before that, especially for rescuers and energy workers. Now the enemy has focused its strikes on critical infrastructure. Energy facilities, in particular, are under fire. The city barely had time to recover after the air-dropped bomb strikes on Monday, when, as a reminder, 13 people were injured before the Russians sent drones towards Sumy. Starting at noon, attack drones continuously targeted the city. Explosions were heard every hour. It is known that at least 5 strikes hit civilian infrastructure. A hospital, a school, several apartment buildings, private houses, and about 15 cars were damaged. It is reported that one drone was packed with shrapnel and struck a children's playground. 9 city residents were injured.
Does it hurt? It doesn't hurt right now. Look, it's still oozing.
It's fine. It's fine.
Around 3 o'clock, a drone attack on a social facility claimed the life of a 72-year-old woman. The drone hit a tree. At the time of the attack, the woman was outside and suffered multiple shrapnel wounds. For half an hour, doctors fought for her life, but the injuries turned out to be fatal.
The cylinder is from it.
From the drone?
Yeah, a lancet. The birch tree is all burned. See? Yeah. And the woman was walking and, well, it hit her.
Around 5 p.m., after another attack, the power went out in part of Sumy and in the settlements of the Romny district. As a result, there were disruptions in water supply and electric transport service. A number of institutions were switched to backup power. Late in the evening, energy workers managed to restore electricity for just a few hours. However, by midnight, another attack by several enemy drones once again cut off power in Sumy. There are also power issues in the Shaska district.
Once again, the enemy attacked the civilian infrastructure of our city. Part of the city was left without electricity, and some hospitals are operating on generators. All relevant services are working to eliminate the consequences of the emergency situation. I hope that all restoration work will be completed as soon as possible.
Despite constant enemy attacks both day and night, the energy workers are doing the nearly impossible and still manage to bring light back to people's homes. By morning, electricity had already started to return in several districts of the city. Since 10 o'clock, all water intakes have been operating normally. Trolley buses are still running on changed routes. Restoration work is ongoing. Oksana Solodavnik, Alexander Levin, Sumi, TSN 1+1.
And we return to the square near the Franco Theater. Our Alina Hushchik is working there right now. And at this very moment, a protest against the controversial law that limits the autonomy of anti-corruption bodies was announced. This law was passed by the Verkhovna Rada yesterday. The president signed it. And today, throughout the day, the authorities have been trying to explain their decisions. As we can see, the activists weren't satisfied, and it seems like their numbers are only growing. Olenka, hello again. I see there are a lot of people behind you. Were you able to talk to anyone? What brought people out here today? What are they here for? We know that rallies have been announced in almost 24 cities across Ukraine.
Against me? A system has been built that works against me?
Yes, in fact, in 24 cities across Ukraine. And honestly, it's hard to imagine what the atmosphere is like in each city right now. Because here in the capital, well, frankly, I can't remember such a patriotic and friendly, let me emphasize, so far, and I hope it stays that way, friendly rally where everyone gathers, both the older and the younger generations, with posters and without, singing the Ukrainian national anthem, singing Ukrainian songs, singing Ukrainian folk songs. And overall, there are more and more people gathering. Right now it's 7:55 on the clock. It's not even 8 yet, which is the announced time when the rally was supposed to start. But already, well, the whole square is filled with people, and we'll see what happens next. Well, actually, the main demand of everyone who came here today is to have the law repealed, either repealed or put to a revote. Well, it's no longer possible to veto this law, but there are 2 ways to deal with it. The first way is to gather 45 votes from deputies and submit this bill, to the Constitutional Court so that it can be repealed. But that's a long game. The second thing that can be done is to create another bill that would effectively cancel out the previous one. And here I want to emphasize that just a few minutes ago, probably half an hour ago, the president released his evening address, in which he already gave hope that he would register such a bill, meaning he has taken this matter into his own hands. We'll see how this develops. Not everyone here has seen the president's evening address yet, so it's still hard to say whether people are satisfied with it, and the rally hasn't started yet either. We'll see how things unfold from 8 o'clock and whether the president's statements today will satisfy everyone who came to this rally. And finally, the rally is only getting bigger, and it seems to me it's getting louder and louder. Irina.
Alina, thank you. Olenka Hushchik will continue working in the park near the Franco Theater. She'll be keeping an eye on the rally. We'll tell you more tomorrow morning on TSN Online. Thank you, Alina. And regarding possible provocations from Russia in connection with the adoption of the law on NABU and SAP, the main intelligence directorate is issuing warnings. The intelligence service urges Ukrainians to remain level-headed both in their assessments and actions, emphasizing that Russia intends to take advantage of recent events and use the social tension within our country to destabilize and discredit us. In particular, according to the Defense Intelligence, the aggressor's primary goal is to weaken Western support in order to undermine Ukraine's ability to resist in the armed struggle. We are returning to Istanbul. There, the third round of negotiations between the Russian and Ukrainian sides is underway. And we already have a comment from the Secretary of the National Security and Defense Council, Rustem Umerov. He is leading the Ukrainian delegation in Istanbul. Stay tuned.
Fulfilling the president's directive, the Ukrainian delegation has arrived in Istanbul. We are continuing the negotiation process for the sake of achieving a just and lasting peace. We are grateful to the Republic of Turkey and personally to President Erdogan for their consistent support of Ukraine and for creating a platform for dialogue. Ukraine consistently advocates for a meeting of the leaders. We were ready for it yesterday. We are ready for it today. We are ready for it tomorrow. At the same time, the humanitarian track is working. Thanks to the agreements reached in Turkey, we have already managed to bring back over 1,000 Ukrainian soldiers, and we will continue this work for the sake of everyone waiting at home. Today,
So, you just heard a comment from the head of the Ukrainian delegation, Secretary of the National Security and Defense Council, Rustem Umerov. How did you manage to record him before the negotiations started? Or have they already finished? We'll ask our Natalia Fibrik about this live right now. TSN correspondent is working in Istanbul. Natalka, so how did you manage to catch Rustem Umerov and record that comment?
Irina, to be honest, that's not our video. That is, we didn't just record it ourselves. It was, well, obviously we still got it, but our media received it directly from Istanbul. And interestingly, at the moment, the meeting hasn't just not finished, it hasn't even started yet. Just half an hour ago, during the previous live segment, I said the meeting was about to begin, since the camera crews were actually taken in on time for the protocol filming. And our cameraman texted me back that they were already being led practically to the negotiation hall. So what I know right now is that they're still sitting there, everyone is gathered, Ukrainian cameramen, Russian and international ones. They're all sitting there together, and they're still not being led into the hall yet. In other words, the negotiations haven't started yet. And Russian media are reporting that right now there's a bilateral meeting taking place between the heads of both delegations, the Ukrainian and the Russian ones, Rustem Umerov and Vladimir Medinsky. We can't verify this information at the moment. We don't have any confirmation right now. However, this could very well be true because the delegations did arrive here on time. So why haven't the negotiations started yet? Well, it's quite possible that such a meeting is happening right now, and the rest of the delegation members are waiting for the negotiations to begin in a broader format. And indeed, Rustem Umerov has already outlined the main topics of the negotiations in his comments. These are the humanitarian track, the exchange of prisoners, and the return of Ukrainian children. However, the Ukrainian delegation will also strongly insist today on preparing a meeting at the highest level, since the Ukrainian side believes that only in this way can real, tangible progress be achieved. So far, as we've seen in previous meetings, it was only possible to achieve some results specifically in the humanitarian sphere when agreements were made about prisoner exchanges. And briefly, I'll also add that indeed, it's worth mentioning that the Ukrainian delegation started their day today in Ankara. There were high-level meetings there, and only after that did they arrive here, in Istanbul. Meanwhile, the Russians flew straight to Istanbul for these negotiations. So we're still waiting for these negotiations to actually begin. We know that a press conference is scheduled, as well as press briefings from both sides after the negotiations are over. So, only later will we have some results from these talks.
I think that's a good sign as well. If the Ukrainian delegation first met with President Erdogan, while the Russians weren't even allowed in there. Thank you, Natalka. I wish you a productive evening. And of course, we're waiting for news from Istanbul. Thank you. Friends, with that, I'm wrapping up this TSN broadcast. Stay tuned to this channel, because there's always something interesting here. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss our next meeting. As usual, tomorrow at 7:30 p.m. For now, here's a brief look at how TSN correspondents saw this Wednesday. The second day of protests across Ukraine over the new law that cuts the autonomy of anti-corruption agencies. The day before, it was passed by the Verkhovna Rada and signed by the president. Volodymyr Zelensky promises to develop an action plan and present it to the public. Meanwhile, the heads of SAP and NABU are demanding clear legislative steps to restore the guarantees that were revoked. The State Bureau of Investigation has launched an investigation into the crash of a fighter jet in Volyn. The accident happened the previous evening at one of the region's airfields during a combat mission. The pilot managed to eject in time, and his condition is stable. A special investigative team has been formed to determine the circumstances of the accident. 25 people who were poisoned at one of Lviv's restaurants have been diagnosed with salmonellosis. This was reported by specialists from the State Service of Ukraine on Food Safety and Consumer Protection. During the inspection, a number of violations were also discovered. Out of 23 restaurant employees, only 7 had medical books. The establishment also failed to comply with sanitary standards and stored products in violation of regulations. A historic event, the first service of the clergy of the Orthodox Church of Ukraine was held in the distant caves, the heart of the Kiev-Pechersk Lavra. The liturgy was led by Metropolitan Epiphanius of Kiev and all Ukraine. In recent decades, the case had been overseen by monks of the Moscow Patriarchate.